Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Odyssey. My name is Simon Couillard. This podcast is all about navigating the early career clinician researcher waters. Clinician scientist researcher waters. We're going to delve into the journey of a research career. And I have here with me Jay Hirota, an associate professor from the University of McMaster. Jay has, we've interacted in the past in congresses, and I always thought it was super interesting his take on this day's subject, which is innovation and IP in a clinician scientist's journey, but also any scientist's journey. So thank you, Jay. Can you introduce yourself a bit to the audience today, please?
Yes, Simon, thank you for the opportunity. Happy to be here. Jeremy Hirota, I go by Jay, Associate Professor of Medicine here at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm also a serial entrepreneur of three ventures now. I sort of say third time's a charm. I think this third one that we're working on, Tesla Biosciences, is leveraging previous experiences, but I'm happy to share all those experiences that I've taken along the way around commercialization and entrepreneurship and innovation with your audience today.
Thank you, Jay. So amazing to have you, and thank you. I know you're very busy, so I'm going to ask you, because this audience is really, early career researchers, probably maybe fellow students, but also maybe year one, year two scientists. So can you just walk us through like IP 101 class? So what is IP, patent, trademark, license? What are all these terms? And, high level, we're not giving anyone a university course today, but I do think it's worthwhile before we talk more about it.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think in taking some of my training and learning in this area myself, I should preface this by saying this is not legal advice. Please, please consult your own, lawyers for this.
This is Canadian law. Canadian law.
Exactly. But that is that's probably a first step. Is that there are professionals in this space that if you do have questions and there are very important, issues that could have consequences, I would defer to the experts in that case. So I'm a PhD trained scientist and I'm not a lawyer, but I have taken IP workshops, IP training, and actually at Tesla Biosciences, I'm considered the IP strategy lead.
The IP guy.
Anything related to the IP, I'm involved in processing it for the company right now. So really at a high level, some people might think IP patents. Patents is just one pillar of intellectual property, which is IP. And so, yes, those are the ones that we hear about, and companies may grow and die on their patent portfolio. But I think it sort of oversteps some of the other patent or the other intellectual property that we might not think about on a day-to-day basis. Copyright. This podcast, has the potential to be copyrighted, and therefore anyone else that wants to broadcast and use this podcast would need to seek your permission, because it is a form of intellectual property, and that's copyright. And we can think about that with clinician scientists on some questionnaires. They may develop validated questionnaires, and they can then determine who gets rights to that copyright and how that can be used. So I think copyright, we think about music and albums or art, that immediately you see the little C because it's copyrighted. And the interesting thing about that, it doesn't cost a thing. It doesn't cost a thing right away.
Good to know.
Whereas some things like patents have quite high costs. So that's copyright. I will start with that. I think that's probably the easiest. Trademarks are a step further. Trademarks, I'm not sure, Simon, if you have an Odyssey branding yet.
No, this is all open science. Yeah.
And so, there are things that you may want to protect in terms of the trademark, and whether it's a name of your questionnaire. It's not only the content, but maybe it's the name of your questionnaire and a logo for the questionnaire, and or the consortium that you're building to help facilitate clinical trials or something. Even if it's a nonprofit, even if it isn't about making money, but it's protecting your brand and protecting your what you stand for as either an individual or a group or a company. So it's not necessarily about making money, but it's protecting your image and your brand, and that would be trademarks. And they do have costs.
Okay,
and then you have to think about, how are you going to pay for those as well? Now, another common thing I would say, so we've talked about trademarks and copyright. kind of in between are some trade secrets. Trade secrets are things that, Simone,
sounds interesting.
The way you handle a patient, a challenging patient, or there's sort of an art to what you do on a day-to-day. Maybe this is your trade secret, and you don't necessarily want to disclose how you operate, because then other people could get a competitive advantage. They could gain your competitive advantage. And so you don't need to disclose this to anybody. You don't do any filings. You literally just keep it private to yourself or your immediate team. And I think the historical anecdote is the Coca-Cola recipe has been a trade secret. That it's not patented, it's not copyrighted, it's not written down where somebody could find it, but it is a trade secret that those in the company know. And then I think, and that doesn't have a cost either. You just have to, the only cost is keeping it quiet to yourself. And then as maybe I think you talked about there was patents. And patents are, the highest form of intellectual property. They have the most costs associated with them. But then these are where, the big dollars in pharma and other companies, tech companies, they rely on this type of IP protection.
And what I've understood now is, requesting a patent, or I don't know what the term is, pending patent, so patent pending. So you deposit a request for a patent. It's not the same as having an issued patent, right? But it does protect you during that request phase. Is that it?
Absolutely. And if you feel that you have a discovery or some form of knowledge that the patent lawyers will, and the patent agents have this term, it's non-obvious and it's inventive. Yep. And so, if whatever your idea is non-obvious and it's inventive, and so it requires a little bit of a leap that someone wouldn't come up with just, if they knew everything, they would come. It has to cross that bar, which is a weird bar to describe. But if you think you've crossed that bar, then you can take that step to trying to file a patent. And then that first step is filing a provisional patent. That's probably the most cost-effective step here in Canada, as far as my understanding goes. For under $1,000 with your institute or even yourself, you should be able to file a provisional patent, which is sort of your first line in the sand where it's like, this is my idea. And then you have a certain amount of time after that to decide if you're going to go to the more expensive filings that would first probably start with a patent cooperation treaty, a PCT filing, which then gives you access to get into multiple jurisdiction filings on a global scale. So you can see that, all right, well, now all of a sudden, depending on where I want to file,
it's complex.
The cost scale proportionally to the number of jurisdictions you could go to.
Can I backtrack one thing, and then we'll finish the 101 chapter? License. What's a license? Sorry for my ignorance. Yeah.
No problem. So if there is intellectual property that is created, this could be a copyright, this could be a patent, then the holder of that intellectual property, and I'm going to use you as an example, say there's a questionnaire that you validated, you can write a license agreement either on your own or with lawyers to help. And then from that license agreement, if someone wants to use your questionnaire, they have to pay you a royalty that's based on what's written in that license agreement. And so you can set out the terms, how they can use it, how long they can use it, who they can use it on. And then based on those licensing terms, they will then kick back some of the money that, either that they generate from using your technology, or they give it to you because it's a fee for service or fee for your technology.
Good. Well, what I like is you gave a lot of examples. We've kind of preempted my next question, but maybe we can mix my next question maybe with your first project experience in parallel terms. So when should a researcher recognize or think about recognizing some IP level? Maybe you can liaise with your first IP experience and say, at what point did you think, oh, this should be IP? And maybe you can reflect also on possibilities where you were burnt because you had already diffused your idea, your good idea, your non-obvious idea, and it was too late. So I don't know, I'll leave it open to you, but just give us a sense of when and how we should be thinking about this, and give us maybe an example of your story or one or two examples of your own story.
Yeah, I liked it. You just said when and how we should be doing this.
Okay.
Because I just gave a talk on my entrepreneurship journey to a graduate program at McMaster University just yesterday. and I advocated and for early engagement with your tech transfer office. Most universities will have a technology transfer office. They may be also called industry liaison offices, but these are the
innovations office, tech transfer.
innovations office.
So,
And I don't know all the
yeah.
the names they go by, but there are these offices that at each institute, and even if it's a research institute at a hospital, they should have one of these offices that deal with intellectual property and licensing agreements and sometimes agreements between industry and academia. I would propose that even if you don't have an idea now, whether they have seminars, whether they have workshops, whether they have lunch and learns, to begin liaising and connecting and introducing yourself to these individuals, because it's one of these, you don't know what you don't know. And by going to these things and talking to the individuals with an open mind, you don't know if it's going to be, the idea is going to come tomorrow or if it's going to be coming in 5 years. But I think there's that expression, chance favors the prepared mind. And so by taking a proactive approach, Simone, you're not going to find yourself wondering, should I talk about this? Should I not talk about what am I allowed? Because you've prepared yourself for that eventuality. And I think people, in the innovative research space or thinking innovatively about their research or clinical services and how they're delivering, inevitably they're going to come up with this idea. And it probably helps if they've already got the connections that they can quickly call them, they can quickly schedule a meeting, and they can be a little bit more confident and the path has already been laid. So I'm not really tying it to, a personal example there, but I have to say, like a personal example of some intellectual property, but that is exactly how I've been mentored in this process from my postdoctoral days at UBC. And then when I came back to McMaster in 2017, one of my first meetings was with the tech transfer office.
Yeah, same for me. So when I started, they dragged me to the innovations office, and I honestly didn't know, and it seemed a bit far-fetched that I would come up with an idea, but I actually do these things, and it might not be you, it might be that brilliant student. So well, again, so when you think about it, let's say we're gonna skip the seminar and you're gonna tell us a bit the punch. When would you think about it? When did you think about it? Is there a moment where it's too late? Are there, I know, for example, in medicine, we have these red flag situations where this isn't a moment where you really need to check this, So is there a key moment? Is it in the first conversation or the first time you get that eureka moment? So when or is it any time, So help us. Yeah.
Oh, it is a challenging question to say when's the right time. And
I have
I'm
the
not
impression,
being
yeah,
sorry,
I had the impression it's before you communicate it outside your lab for the first time. I feel for me, I'm not an IP expert. That's where I realize that before you talk outside of your lab of an idea, a non-obvious idea, stop and think. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And I would say that's the best filter is to say, listen, if I've got something, if there's any doubt about this thing that's in my head, that the data that has been generated and the results that I'm seeing, if I have any doubt about that, do not disclose that outside of your group or anyone that has helped generate that data. And then the first step I would do is have a conversation with the tech transfer office. And that means do not submit an abstract. That means do not give a public talk. That means do not, post something on any social media channel or whatever. Really, you will shoot yourself in the foot if that gets out into the public discourse, because then it's called prior art. Even if it's your own prior art, it's now become public.
Yeah.
And now
no longer non-obvious. It's now obvious.
It is obvious. And the patent examiners, depending on what jurisdiction they are, apparently tougher in some places other than say in Canada. They will find these things and then they will hold them against you.
Okay, so now we found at least one opportunity where before starting to talk outside of my lab of my new idea of how to measure lung function, identify risk, pass a questionnaire, assess something, use a new template to do an experiment, whatever, then I would think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I guess from your logic, I'd go meet the tech transfer of the innovations office.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it mean concretely for a student or an investigator? I have this horror story in my mind, and I'll call it a horror story, and I don't want to discourage people, but this new researcher who came in with a senior researcher who they got this great idea, and then it was stealth for 2, 3, 4 years, and they kind of never got out with their idea. Publish or
Mm-hmm.
perish, that whole
Mm-hmm.
paradigm where you need to publish, be out there in conferences, talk, and
Mm-hmm.
then suddenly you're nowhere on the map because you're working on your stealthy ideas. So how does that concretely work out for someone who's trying to make a name in research but suddenly needs to shut their mouth?
Yeah. Well, the good thing about these provisional patents, if you're going down this path,
Yeah.
the good thing about a provisional patent is that is your timestamp that you are associated with that timestamp. And if you decide to then follow with more formal patent filings because you've built the story up more, you built the data package up more, you see potential in it to pursue it, knowing there's going to be follow-on costs that you have to fulfill. But if you know you're going to do that, once the provisional is filed, you can talk about it as much as you want. You talk about it to everyone. And that's not going to impact your ability to then do the filings because of that timestamp.
So that's protection. Is that presumably fast? So you're not suffering that much from a publication perspective.
Yes. Yeah. And that is a bit of an assumption or a misguided assumption that sometimes it's going to slow things down.
Yeah.
Absolutely
I've done one. So now I'm talking as if I was naive, but it was my misconception that it would be long, and actually was. In our case, it was quite fast, And our students, how does it work for the student? Is he like the prisoner of his professor, or how does that work? The sharing of the IP. I mean, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll finish. I'll get to that, and I'll say the student's writing the paper, okay? The student or the abstract and so on has the data package, okay? Because they're driving the work. It's not you and I, unfortunately.
No,
or fortunately,
we do nothing. Let's face it.
And so they're driving that. They're writing it. They have the reports. They have the stats. They've got the findings. So that's going to be in a report. And if that's written in a paper format or even in an abstract format, that can become a very simple basis for the provisional patent. And so as long as you have the relationship with your tech transfer office, that door is open, to contact and be like, I want to submit this for a conference. I want to submit this for a paper. I want to do it in the next, 3 weeks or whatever. They'll have the turnaround time to do it. And they, they won't slow and impede your publish or perish, progress. Yeah. So I think it's maybe historically things weren't as fast. Or maybe institutes weren't as nimble and able to support, but I think they've come around and they know that they can't get in the way of publishing because of the importance of it in a traditional academic career. So that's that. And then, the student...
That horror story was from 3 decades ago, by the way. So you're right that I think it's changed. Yeah.
And coming back to the student and, who owns and is the student, prisoner of the PI, in the case of that, the students generated the data. The student's written the report. The student has drawn the conclusions and has the figures that maybe show the non-obvious nature.
They're the genius
they're the generator of the idea, and so that is not overlooked by your tech transfer offices. And again, we know, I've had conversations with our tech transfer office. And their mandate is not to make money, which is good. Their mandate is to protect student, staff, and faculty. Yeah. And so, our student is part of that triad. And so the tech transfer offices, if they're doing their job properly, will negotiate, will navigate, and will, they don't want to be in a position where a student gets cut out.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Then there's lawsuits and other things because of whatever. So my experience is, and I'll give you a personal example. I actually was on a copyright filing. I was supporting the work, and I said, I don't need to. You guys did the work. It's all you. It's all you. And the students were like, oh no, we'd like to, even nominally you be involved because we wouldn't be here without you. And I'm like, you did all the hard work, and I was trying to give it to them. And I had no ulterior motives. It was just I felt they deserved it. But the tech transfer office said, even if it's a nominal amount that you are named, that is a safe thing to do because you were involved. And so that was a weird way where I didn't want something, and they made sure that I did, just to make sure in the future, if there were any consequences, the appropriate accountability was there.
I'll mention as well that actually in my university, and I think it's like that in many universities now, it's actually written in the rules of the university. Your student will be part of the IP. That's kind of, it's out there. So there were, again, horror stories of students left out of IP, and they lost. The professors lost in every case, because it's now clear that. So our message out there for the students, I think it's important. And so how about maybe one last question on this, and then we'll talk about relationships with the startups and all that. But what would be, you talked about revenue last time early and on, you said this one might pay off. So how about you give us a revenue reality check? So I just had this brilliant idea. Am I going to be a millionaire or not?
Yeah. And wow. So many times there is the inventor is worried. The university, the institute is taking 50% of the IP. I need to break down. Each institute across the country is going to have an IP policy. And what that in your university or institute's IP policy, it's going to talk about the breakdown of who owns the IP and how any revenues or royalties are distributed to the inventors of that IP. So take a look at your own university or institutes to see what it says. McMaster's is one where it is split 50% between the institute and 50% between the inventors. So what that means is if, of the royalties that come in, okay, so say it's a 3% royalty and we sell something for $100, $3 comes into the university. Of that $3, $1.50 goes to the university, $1.50 goes to the inventors. You do the math, if there's 3 inventors, we each get 50 cents. Now, the company that licensed that technology and sold something for $100, they had to give $3 back. Now they have $97 to play with here. Now, depending on how efficient they are in bringing their product or service to market, maybe they make $90. Okay, so they're making $90, whereas the inventors are getting paid 50 cents each.
Yeah, sounds off.
And so it might sound off, but what it is that the company that is commercializing that technology and bringing it to market as a product or as a service, they have their operations, they have investment, they have risk, they have a footprint. Whereas the other people, they just sit back and there's zero risk for the inventor. And so the real risk goes in building and scaling the business. And so, that's where the big reward is, which is the $97 and not the $3. And so I do tell this breakdown because people think because they invent it, they should own it all. Well, it's really who puts the money down and who's willing to back it and who's really willing to take the risk. That's who ends up making the money in any of this intellectual property game. Brilliant.
So now it brings me to your shirt. So, so obviously you're an associate professor at McMaster, and now from what I understand from your shirt is you have one of these brilliant ideas that you stole from a student, but that a student presumably is with you and all that. But you went around and how do you reconcile the fact so you can start up a company and still be professor? And then I presume what you're going in, walk me through it. I guess you're aiming to get that $90 as well, or how does it work out when you do a startup and then you put in capital? So I don't want to do a full course on entrepreneurship, but maybe the highlight of how that route goes down. If you want to do not just the license and get that 50 cents, but you want to go invest some time and how does that work out?
Yeah, and I'll just say, it's not for everybody. You have to love it. You have to be extremely passionate about it. And, fellow mentors. I am. And fellow entrepreneurs that are mentors of mine, that are academic entrepreneurs, they say, listen, you're only going to be good at one thing. Like, you're either going to be a good entrepreneur for your business or you're going to be a good academic, but one of them's going to give. And so you're probably not going to see me giving keynote talks, at ATS or, at ERS because of the commitment that needs to go into the company. Now,
there's a choice. I see a coup d'option, we say in French, but an option here that costs something. It costs you something for an academic career. But so how does it play out? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you also have to look at your institutional agreements. I hate to be like leaning on institutes and things like that, but if they give you the freedom, then you are allowed that freedom. And we have 1 day a week we're allowed to do some professional external
Yeah.
activities, and so largely that's what I try to do with this company. And then in the evenings, no one governs my evenings, so I try to do it in the evenings. But that comes from passion. It does
Mm.
not come personally for me from the money side of things. It's more of, how do I make the most out of the research dollars that I've been given, and beyond papers, talks, citations. For me, I joke around. I have my two lovely daughters, and when they see dad busy and dad, working, it's like, is dad working to make a bigger CV? Or is dad working to, I don't see patients like you, Simone, so I
Yeah.
can't directly help them. But if I can make a product that can help a drug company advance an asset that then can become a therapeutic, okay. If I can contract that process or increase the odds of success, okay. I'm willing to do that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's you have to have the passion, and it's, I don't get paid at all. $0 from the company.
An investment of
So
time. An investment of time.
it's just
But
time.
if I can unpack what you said, and I do know that's the case for my university as well, there is a certain part of your time that as an academic, your university allows you to be their employee, but they know you're going out there and having that role in that startup that you had, and you're still an associate professor. There's limits, and I guess that's negotiated with your university. But it is exciting that you have that. So as you said, I'm a clinician, so I get to see patients and change my mind off of academia, but you have your startup to change your mind off your papers, I guess, and your rest. So that brings you something really interesting.
Yeah, and we may be running out of time here, but I'm just noticing that I don't want them to be considered as mutually exclusive. The lessons that I've learned in academia are leveraged in the company, and then the lessons that I'm learning in the company are being leveraged in academia. And even the funding that I get and the research questions I ask are now more focused. They're actually driven by market. They're driven by the demands. And I'm just applying my academic mindset a little bit, more focused towards a product, a tangible outcome. And so I don't actually think that they're competing and pulling apart. I actually think it can be a 1 + 1 = 3. And then, when you can find those synergies, it's a bit of a rush, right? So it's not work. And I mean, even after this, I have to go in 15 minutes to go to an entrepreneurship event on campus.
Nice.
Because the universities are increasingly valuing individuals that bring this skill set to the academic environment. So this is what I'm going to be teaching, in the next 5 years from lived experience. And so I actually, it's not me pulling away from the university. It's actually self-directed learning, and a unique skill set to bring it back to the university. It's like you doing another fellowship, going to another place to learn this new, approach that then you can apply to your clinic and to your institute. So I do want to frame it that way. It's not a distraction. It's actually value added to the services you bring to the institute.
Sounds like it really canalizes your energy. So how about we finish with closing advice? So if a new scientist and or clinician scientist listening today thinks they may have an innovative idea, what should they do tomorrow? So give us the bullet.
Do as much homework as you can just on your computer, seeing what prior art may be out there. Collate that, download it, put it in a folder, get it all organized as much as you possibly can, and use any search tools you can with all the AI tools. They can mine pretty effectively. But you're never going to get everything. And then as soon as you have that, and I wouldn't spend too much time, I would go to my tech transfer office. I would set up a meeting with them. I would say, here's my brief. Here's what I have. Here's my homework that I've done. I think there's a market opportunity here because there's an unmet clinical need. And, I know that this is a pain point in the healthcare system. I'd like to pursue this. Can you set me up to have another conversation? And you could do that tomorrow.
Fab. And, I like that non-obvious idea. So, I mean, I'd like you to maybe finish with describe to us in 2 sentences your IP. And I'll just start by, while you're thinking about that, I'll just start by our brilliant idea is me and a brain surgeon who were speaking about shortness of breath. And he was talking about treating asthma with neuromodulation. I said, well, actually, dyspnea is shortness of breath is much more important a sensation to block. And then we had this idea to help together with a student a brilliant student who did all the work, of course, to block the sensation of dyspnea of shortness of breath with the non-invasive neuromodulation. So there's an unmet need for my patients who are choking to, really having a nasty life, and a possibility there. So that's my IP. But how about you? Talk to us and to get us excited for your IP in 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that opportunity. I mean, I started out with Tesla Biosciences. I wanted to better model healthy and diseased lung, diseased lung, specifically fibrotic lung. So I needed material that was soft like healthy lung and stiffer like fibrotic lung. But any of the materials on the market were just hard plastic to grow my cells on. And so I worked with a chemist and a co-founder and a good friend, Jose Moran Mirabel, and we came up with a formulation with a genius PhD student, David Gonzalez, and the filing was made on the intellectual property that allowed us to create a soft material or a stiff material, 3D print it through 3D printers, and keep cells and tissues alive. So that's starting out to, just understand basic lung health and disease better. But where we're moving it is, can we make it to be a safe substance for use in humans? And then Can we get into the regenerative medicine space? And maybe can we repair that fibrotic lung? Can we repair that COPD lung? So that's probably my next 5-10 years of academic research. And any of those outputs we're going to try to commercialize with Tesla.
Sounds exciting. I feel like in our 2 stories, there's someone else, an outsider. You, it's a chemist. Me, it's a brain surgeon in my field. So I feel like we learned a lot. And of course, the students, it's great to see that open mind to new paradigms. So thanks again for being with us, Jay. So thanks for being on this episode. And I guess I'll leave this to your next talk. And I wish everyone a good day. And this was our first episode with a video. We'll see how this works out. But thanks and have a good day, Jay.
Super pleasure. And with any of your listeners, if they want to reach out, I'm happy to try to respond and answer to any of their questions regarding commercialization entrepreneurship.
Great. Thank you, Jay.
Take care. Bye.